The Mother Nature smart drugs that are just endemic out there that people don't think of as smart drugs. Number one, it's caffeine. Coffee, tea, and chocolate. Global wars have been fought over these compounds. They have fueled human progress. The Enlightenment in Europe was based on the explosion of coffee houses. Civilization is tied to these things. You go back 5,000 years in China, there was tea. And they tracked the different grades and what they did. And we knew this. You go back in India, tea. Go back in Africa, coffee. So this stuff has been around. What's the other massive, most studied smart drug that Mother Nature makes that no one's ever heard of? It's actually tobacco. Smoking is terrible for you. Everyone knows smoking is bad for you. Everyone knows it makes you smell bad, it makes you look old, and all the bad stuff, cancer, teeth falling out, whatever else. However, when people use nicotine, they type 15% faster. Their working memory improves. They perform better. And we are so wired to perform better that we are willing to give up the second half of our quality of life to feel good right now. And emerging studies in the last 30 years from an academic researcher at Vanderbilt. I call him Dr. Nicotine when I interviewed him on Bulletproof Radio. He's like, hey, here's the first paper that shows from the 1980s that low doses of oral nicotine, not smoked, but just purified nicotine, reverse Alzheimer's disease. If you look at what's likely to kill you today if you're in the West, it's diabetes, cancer, heart disease, and Alzheimer's disease. And I just wrote an anti-aging book looking at these four things. What if a very tiny amount of nicotine on a daily basis not only made you smarter, faster, made your cells work better, but also reduced your risk of Alzheimer's? Well, I do not sell nicotine. If I did, I wouldn't be allowed to say that. But what I can say is there is evidence of this. There's also evidence that large doses of nicotine or smoking are just bad, right? The dose is, or the, what does it say? The dose is in the poison's in the dose, something like that. So we can look at these plant-based compounds and just understand we want to feel good, we want to perform well, and Mother Nature will help us do it, and plant-based compounds are a big part of it. The secret that no one had told me was that if you want to do the personal development work, if your body, your hardware isn't working very well, it's going to be really difficult, if not impossible. So get your body working well enough to make enough energy to create personal change. And that has been transformative for me. Indigenous cultures everywhere knew that there were two things that worked for parasites, for diarrhea, and for GI upset. One of them is activated charcoal. The other one is certain kinds of clay. And you've probably heard bentonite clay is another one. These are toxin binders, broad spectrum ones. So when I was in Nepal and Tibet, you could go to little street vendors and they have these little bags or bottles of charcoal tablets because there's a lot of giardia. There's a lot of parasitic things where people get diarrhea. And they'd say, oh, charcoal is what you do if you have any upset for your stomach. So if my kids have an upset stomach, do they get charcoal first? Yes, they do. Does it usually work to make them feel better? Yeah. If I eat something and I feel weird afterwards, I take charcoal and I feel better. It's pretty amazing, but this has been around for thousands of years. It's used in Ayurveda, it's used in traditional Chinese medicine. The indigenous people in the United States used it. And you just go around the world like, oh, we all knew about charcoal. And charcoal is amazing because about a teaspoon of charcoal, depending on how it's made, can have the surface area of a football field or a soccer field, depending on what country you're from, same difference. And what's going on there? Well, it's basically these crinkly carbon. So the little nooks and valleys and canyons in it have this huge amount of ability to bind to toxins, and it has a strong negative electrical charge. So you take this, if you take it with food that has, mold toxins in it, it binds to the mold toxins to the point that in agriculture, ranchers will say, oh, I'm going to buy the food with these field toxins and storage toxins that we know is bad, but we're going to buy charcoal. We're going to put it in the food so the animals don't get sick. So I kind of think I'll do that for myself too, because their data set is very strong. And there are studies out there, not of anything that I manufacture, just of charcoal in general, looking at what it does to things like cholesterol, looking at what it does even for longevity in animal studies. They're living 15% longer from having this. What's going on with charcoal in general is that it binds to all kinds of toxins, including pollutants. But the most important thing that's emerging for the anti-aging field right now is something called lipopolysaccharide. You have gut bacteria. All of us have some good ones and some bad ones, even if you do everything right and the good ones keep the bad guys in check. But the bad guys make LPS, which crosses the gut barrier and causes inflammation throughout the body, including in the brain. And it's one of the things that probably triggers some of the causes of aging. Charcoal sticks to LPS. So I think it's a good idea to take it regularly. I do. The problem is that it's so strong that if you go to the emergency room and you've been poisoned, they're going to pump charcoal into your stomach. So charcoal has to be taken away from any medications or anything that you don't want bound up in it because it's that powerful. So I take it on an empty stomach every day.